Ashley.
Hey, Robin. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm so good today.
Yeah, today's a good day. Guess who we have on our show today?
I mean, I don't have to guess, but our listeners should. I know it's someone that you are really pumped about. Talking about for weeks.
I am. I was telling my mom today how excited I was, and I told her, like, I'm getting chills right now because I told her I felt like I was really coming full circle on our podcast. As many of our listeners know, I got the idea for a podcast when I was at Crimecon 2018 and Podcast Row, and I thought, this is what I want to do. This is the realm that I want to be in. I don't know if it's true crime, but I know that I want to do a podcast. So today we have Kevin Balfe with us, and he is from Crimecon. Hi, Kevin.
Welcome.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started? I know you're with is it Red Velvet?
Red Seed Ventures. Yeah.
Red Seed.
I like, you know what, maybe this might be a name change though. This is much better.
That sounds delicious.
It really does.
Yeah, I do like Red Velvet Cake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how Crimecon 2017 got started?
Those are two very large, big, loaded questions, but
yeah, welcome to
I'm
my
not so
world.
good at the. Yeah, no.
You're a friend of mine. You'll get used to the interrogations.
Are you a big hit at parties? Do people invite you to parties?
They do, actually. Yes.
I'm sure. There's never going to be a dull a lag in conversation.
No.
The about myself, I don't know. But the Crimecon one has a better answer. So my brother and I had started Red Seed Ventures in 2015, Red Velvet, as you would call it, Red Velvet LLC, the new name for the company. And we were exploring a whole bunch of genres. You know, I'm a true crime fan in terms of like growing up. I watched Dateline and you know, Cops I would consider to be a true crime show in its purest sense. And so, you know, I had some nexus to true crime, but I think at that point in time, when shows like Making a Murder were coming out and The Jinx was coming out on HBO and Serial, of course, you know, I think a lot of us who were not like the prototypical true crime viewers in terms of the daytime, like murder recreation type shows, to me, those properties all sort of introduced to us that there's this whole new other side of true crime, which is, for someone like me, and I felt at that point for a lot of others, much more interesting. The storytelling, the victim side, the education side, the science side. And so I think all those things sort of coalesced in terms of the company being started and those properties opening our eyes, where Nancy Grace was circling off of headline news at that point in time and was looking for her next opportunity. And we had been talking to her about some things that we might do for her specifically in terms of Red Sea, building a new website for her, launching live events, podcasts, radio shows, those sorts of things. And in doing the due diligence for that business and in trying to figure out sort of, you know, what that could be, I said to myself, well, whatever we build for Nancy, we should launch it at like whatever the Comic-Con is for true crime. And so it was really about that process of looking for that convention and that live event and realizing that it didn't exist, that the sort of germ for Crimecon itself came about, because we just said, well, if other people would be looking to launch their product and sponsor, then, you know, this is something that we should look at building, and why has no one done it? So 2017 was very much a year of like, if we build it, will anyone come? Are we wrong about this? And it was really about testing, and we're not live event people. So learn, how do you do a live event? How do you contract with a hotel? How do you get talent to show up? How do you get fans to show up? How do you market to them? It was very much a learning year, but that was the impetus for the whole thing.
How did you research? Did you know of anybody? Did you have people that helped you along the way? Did you do a lot of Google research? How did you did you know to even ask?
That's a lot.
Yeah. How did you even know to ask the questions that you needed to ask?
Yeah, it's a lot. I'd say to people a lot that if we had known, you know, the prototypical, if we had known then what we know now, we probably would have been too scared to ever do this, because it is more than we realized at the time. And I think more than fans should, there's no reason why a fan coming to Crimecon should understand what goes into it. They should just enjoy the experience, but it's a lot. And I don't think we understood that at the time. But yeah, there were some key people that helped. I mean, the number one thing, and still to this day is the number one thing, is the venue. And trying to understand what, if you want to go, if you're Taylor Swift and you want to go rent out MetLife Stadium in New York and play for 65,000 people, that's a pretty well established. MetLife says, here's how much it costs to rent our stadium. Here's things you need to do. Right. But what I didn't understand was in the hotel world, when you think about how many rooms they want you to book in exchange for free meeting space. Like that's the way this works, right? They give you meeting space for free. You book a certain number of hotel rooms. So your challenges there are, okay, how many people can I get and how much space will they give me? What happens if I can't get those number of people? And then what happens if people want to come to, especially for year one, what happens if people want to come to Indianapolis and go to our event, but they live locally, or they want to stay at the Holiday Inn down the street, or they like Hilton's, not Marriott's, and so they stay there. And so all those sorts of fears start creeping up of like, well, if I can't hit this hotel block commitment, all these really bad things happen business-wise. And I think we found, there's meeting planners who essentially deal with all this stuff. And I called a bunch and left a bunch of voicemails and emails saying, hey, we're thinking about starting this event. And a couple of people called me back, and the conversations, like, they're not interested in taking on a brand new event because most of them fail. But one person called me back, and we had like an hour-long call, and he was so excited by the idea and said, this is going to be big, and I want to do this, and I'm going to help you through the whole thing. To this day, despite how big it's gotten and how many now other groups have come in and tried to take that business and everything, we've stuck with him. It's him and his wife. They're the cutest people ever, and we've stuck with them because of that bet they took on us back when we had nothing. And, I think it really just shows that sort of, a lot of what you guys talk about and what all this is about, that this idea that, put your faith in something and your belief in something, and sort of all good things can come. And, that's an example of he showed us the ropes and taught us how to do this. And so we've maintained that loyalty ever since. And of course, we're great friends.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's incredible to me. 2017 seems pretty late to the game for this to happen as far as true crime, because true crime podcasts and everything have been on the scene probably for, I don't know, like 10 years. Yeah. So 2017 sounds late to the game, but that's amazing. And to push through those fears, because I can imagine that would be really scary. You're putting, a lot of times these events, aren't you putting like a big down payment and you're not even seeing ticket sales yet?
Well, financially, it's a terrible, it's real, yeah. It's tough. Like, especially we were a startup company at that point in time. Mm-hmm. And so we were doing a variety of things, but this was not the reason we started the company at all. And so for me to go to my partners and say, hey, are you guys willing to take a risk in something that we don't have experience in, but that we think is a good opportunity, and we don't really know the business that well, and we're going to put all this money out and sort of hope that people come in. Without overstating it, we really were risking the company, on a single event, which is not necessarily where, I don't think they're teaching that at Harvard Business School. So, we also we've always been bet on yourself type people, and that, we'll make something work, and maybe it's not exactly what we think it's going to be, but it'll be this, and adapt and change and be flexible. And we've tried to maintain that throughout with all of the things that we do, not just Crimecon. But I think, with Crimecon 2017, that event started in terms of the germ of it when we formed the company in 2015. 2016 was the year of planning. And then ultimately it went on sale, I think in like July or August that year. But really the first 2 years of the Red Seat as a company were spent in sleepless nights, stressed out about whether anyone would come to this thing.
Yeah.
And nobody, honestly, when we put I can pull up the numbers, but when we put the thing on sale, right. it was not exactly like, I didn't sleep better that night. Like we sold 2 badges, and then
I was going to ask you, do you have the numbers?
I do. Yeah. I can pull them up on another screen.
Oh, only if you want to. Is it safe to say that they were lower than that you thought they were going to be, or you were just worried and then they came in later?
Yeah, well, they were, it was the later. We didn't know what to expect, right? It's one of those, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to make a sound, right? Like if you put this event on sale and no one cares, what is the expectation, and what is the right price point? And is Indianapolis the right city?
Right.
There were so many conversations around all of that stuff. And, it's not like now where we now have a nice Facebook presence and a nice Instagram presence and a nice email list and like ways that we can access the audience. Back then we didn't have an audience. So even how do you even tell people that you're doing this thing?
That was going to be my next question, is how do you market something that has never been done before? And how do you know you're reaching the right audience? And how do you get them excited when you don't have any track record? Because I think a lot of people, the track record is really important. I mean, Robin, how did you hear about it? You went in 2018, right?
I did. I went to Crimecon 18 in Nashville.
Yeah. That's where I'm from.
Oh, really? Nashville is so great. How? Come on, Ashley.
I know. I'm really slacking. I didn't even know Robin then either.
No. My friend Pam got me hooked on Serial, and she said, have you ever heard of a podcast called Serial? And I said, I've never heard of a podcast, really. So she helped me with a podcast player, and I listened to Serial, and then I went to The Vanished and Undisclosed. And listening to those podcasts came on a marketing thing for Crimecon, and I thought, I'm sure I misheard this. I've never heard of a Crimecon before. So I went home and looked it up, found out about it, and signed up. Found the unofficial Crimecon page for basically ladies going alone. With Wendy
Cupcakes, I believe they're now called.
Yes, we are. I'm an original cupcake, and I have my badge and my cupcake here on my 2018 badge for Crimecon.
I love it.
Yeah, so it grew from that, and then I think more recently it's just grown through word of mouth. It's grown through Crimecon itself. Yeah.
Well, back to that first point. So I just pulled up these numbers. I mean, again, I think you have to put yourself in the position of me, and it's July 2016. And so for, a better part of a year, we've been planning this and figuring out where to put it and how to price it and who would come to, speak at it and what the topics would be and, all of those sorts of things. And then you finally sort of build this up and put this thing on sale. And like, what do you expect? Right. So there it is, July 29th, 2016, end of the day, three people. We had 3. July 30th.
Crazy.
Right. July 30th, we added 0. We still had 3. Right? July 31st, we added 2. We had 5. So, fast forwarding out a month later, August 29th, we had 10. So 10 people in a month had signed up for this event. And, I don't know what the benchmarks were, but I don't think that's where you want to be.
Right.
A month after that, 9/29, we had 46. So, right. So something in September started to help a little bit. We went from 10 to 46. And then a month after that, from 46 to 104. So it sort of doubled, right? And then you start to get to the holiday seasons, and it went from 104 to 143 at the end of November. At the end of December, we had 304. So when you get to that part, you start to think like, okay, now I have an event, right? If 300 people show up, I have an event. And so you start to get past the like, how do I tell 60 people that it's canceled to now, all right, I can now actually start to think about stuff, the programming, how do we get people hands-on, and who do we invite, and how do we incorporate podcasts, and all those sorts of more fun questions. And so I feel like that holiday season was really where we knew we had an event for the first time. And then it was a much more, again, more interesting question about what should the event be.
Oh, I bet that was so exciting now.
It was, but I would love for anyone who is ever starting a business or has this idea, like when you don't know, I would love to go back to those first like 25 people who signed up and just say, why, like we had no speakers announced. We had no talent announced. We had nothing. We'd never done this before. Like, why did you put down several $100s to come to this? Because I think it's an incredible testament to them as well, and their trust that we would actually pull this off.
You got those early adopters. That's amazing. I wish, you had like a Survey Monkey or something you could send out to them.
I know.
I think so many of us.
We know the first person to ever buy a ticket. We know her name, and we've given her lots of great funds over the years, and have when she's had hard times, we've given her free bag. Like we've done a lot because just again, like that first it's the stores that hang up the dollar bill on the wall, their first ever dollar, right? She's like that for us.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I think for people like me, participants who come to these events, you want to help the victims' families, and you want to try to you think to yourself, is there one thing that I'm going to clue in on that ironically nobody else has clued in on, that I can help a family, or I can help put somebody behind bars, or actually help somebody come out of jail because they're truly innocent? So I think that's what the allure is you want to help somebody. You want to try to say, is it just that one thing that I can do to help a family?
Yeah. And I think from all of our surveying now that we might have a much better handle on the audience and why people come and what they're looking for out of it. It's all over the board. There's a large part, that is a large part of it for a lot of people. For other people, they're more myopic around like, I only care about science issues. I only care about forensics or DNA or demonstrations. And other people are, I only care about cold cases and mysteries, and other people are only about podcasts and just want to go to Podcast Row and really interact with the podcasters. So, for us, that's great. It's also challenging in that, we very much look at it like a platform and that we want to provide, just a great diversity of programming every event that does satisfy each of those folks. And, you guys have been, so like the way it's organized with every hour, if you don't like, people have very strong reactions to guests. Every time I see those reactions on Facebook, I smile because great. First of all, I want you to have a strong reaction. If it's positive, you're going to be in that ballroom. If it's negative, you're going to be in one of the 3 other ballrooms, right? So people vote with their tastes every hour. And for the people that absolutely hate Nancy Grace or can't stand that we had the Cannibal Cop or hate this person or this show or this podcast, amazing. Go to something else. And I think that's our job, is to make sure that there's viable alternatives every hour for no matter what people want. But I love when there's passion, online around a particular thing, because I just think that that's what makes it.
The culture around true crime is just so interesting to me, because I wouldn't say I've been into true crime for that long. I think I just started, I can't remember what podcast I listened to first. And it was just like, as soon as I got into it, I was hooked. And then I just think it's so cute that, like Robin was saying, you when, especially as you're not single, I mean, you're married, but it's like going by yourself, like there was a whole group that was willing to go there together. It's like, it's just like a little community. Yeah. And that's so cool to me, because I don't know that you see that at other conferences that I know of. I mean, I've been to a few, but like Crimecon sounds like a different level of just community.
Well, Robin, you probably could to talk to that better than I can, but I mean, what I see is that first of all, I think we purposefully designed it in a way to provide hopefully what feels like a really safe, welcoming atmosphere. You guys, again, no, you're not going to see people in cosplay. You're not going to see people being inappropriate. And so, but over the years, by pricing it a certain way and having certain policies and procedures in place, you ultimately cultivate a certain type of attendee. And I think a lot of attendees feel that this passion is often misunderstood. Like you said earlier, that for you, it's about the victims' families. And again, that's probably the number one thing that we get, and the number one thing we try to program. And so, but if you're going to a cocktail party and you're just going to walk around and say, I love true crime, people, like, the stereotype from someone who doesn't get it is so different than the reality. And I think when people come to one of our events, they can just sort of like let go and be like, okay, everybody here gets it, first of all. So like, I don't even have to have that conversation. Now we can get into like the actual conversations we want to have, right? A specific case or whatever the topic might be. But I think everyone can like let their guard down a little. And I think because of that, it sort of cultivates maybe more close relationships than other events, right? You're not bonding that way when you go to a baseball game.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Kevin, why don't you tell us the other Crimecon events besides Crimecon? There's a cruise and there's a crowd solve. Can you give our listeners a little update?
Yeah, so both of them, have come out of our relationship with Oxygen and trying to figure out just how to expand their sponsorship of what we do and make sure that we're, helping them in every way we can. The crowd solve events came out of, a lot of what you were talking about, which is like, in the Crimecon weekends, it's the difference between a buffet and a seated dinner, right? On a buffet, you're getting a little bit of sort of all this stuff, and you can pick and choose and take what you want. And if you don't like the chicken, you go get the salmon. That's Crimecon. But part of those surveys were a lot of people saying, hey, I would just get an hour into this particular cold case with the family there and the police there and like just start to wrap my arms around it and want to get into the evidence. And then the hour was up and the bell would ring and we'd go to the next thing. And how I want to do more of that. And so CrowdSolve was really our answer to, people saying, I want to go deeper into one case rather than sort of spread out across the weekend with all these things. And it was ambitious, right? I mean, I don't think that most police departments are used to working with outside groups in this way of really opening up their case files in a cold case. Rightfully, a lot of police are territorial and I don't look at this as a negative, but I always say to people who sometimes we've gotten the reaction of like, I can't believe that this police department won't work with you guys on this case. I was like, well, picture yourself as the captain of this police department. And we make material progress on this case over the weekend. Maybe we even break the case. What are the media headlines the next week, right? 300 amateur detectives take over a ballroom and solve a case that our inept police department couldn't solve for the last 12 years. It's not a great headline if you're now everyone wants to say, well, the police shouldn't care about the media. They should care about solving a case. Sure, but this is real life. They do care about the media. They have to work with the media every day on the things that they want the media to do. And so I think it was an ambitious program, and we've run it twice. We ran one in Seattle last fall, and we ran one in Chicago in February, right before all the virus stuff happened. And incredible experiences. I mean, we couldn't be happier with the way the events went. I think both police departments that participated, which was Thurston County in Seattle, and Newburgh Heights out of Ohio in the Chicago event, loved the experience, felt that they got a ton out of it in terms of new information. They got our experts that we brought to the event to really review case files, which for small these aren't New York City and Chicago, right? Like these are small jurisdictions that don't have access to the people that we're bringing that are top of the line forensics, deception detection folks. Mark McClish is a guy who's hopefully going to come to Orlando this year, who's just an incredible, he's from the U.S. Marshals, and his whole thing was watching suspect interrogations and determining through their language, body language, and everything else, the likelihood of them lying. And so he would go back, he would come into these CrowdSolve events with us and, and watch these old interrogation tapes from these 12, 15-year-old cases and give the chief of police his real professional perspective on who he should go re-interview. So, I think that the challenge for those events is telling attendees, you are in an experience which you're going to learn a ton. You're going to see things that people don't get to see, but this isn't Hollywood. Like, you're not going to come out Sunday at 2:00 with an envelope of like, here's who the killer is. This is, can we provide enough new, interesting theories, leads, new questions to ask old suspects, new things that just sort of reignites an investigation, which is then going to go on for months and months after we're done. But for the most part, I think we were really successful with that. And I think that in both cases, the police have found what the attendees came up with to be very useful. And at a minimum, the local media is re-excited by the fact that we're coming to town and doing this thing. And in a lot of cases that are this old, as you guys know, it's all like somebody needs to crack, right? I don't know what you guys love for cases, but Maura Murray is the example that a lot of people know.
I was going to say, that's Robin right there.
Yeah, well, I know you had Lance and Tim on. And so it's like, that's just an example of a case where kind of everything has been thought about, looked at, re-looked at, talked to, but somebody knows what actually happened, right? And there, as in a lot of old cases, creating an environment of pressure, creating an environment where someone's just going to say something that they've not said before is what is going to actually break the case. That happened in our Seattle event. One of the cases that we chose was a case, this woman, Nancy Moyer, she was a mom who was killed about 12 years ago, or went missing 12 years ago. She's presumed killed. And a podcast called Hide and Seek started covering it. It was a local podcaster, a guy named James Basinger. He was an insurance agent.
I haven't heard of that one yet.
Took a great podcast. He took a liking to the local case and decided to start following it. He saw what we were going to do with CrowdSolve, and he emailed in and said, "Hey, I have a case if you guys haven't picked one yet." And I talked to him, and it sort of checked all of our boxes. He said, "The only problem is I can't get the police involved in the podcast. our hands off. But we were able to call the police department, and using, not only what we've done in the live event space, but more importantly for them, our experts who we would bring to Seattle as part of this, they signed on. And about 60 days before the event, I don't know if my memory serves right, Guy, and the podcast is happening and CrowdSolve is moving toward happening, and Guy calls 911 and says, I have a confession to make. And he admits to killing Nancy. And the next day, the guy wakes up in prison, and whether he was drunk or high or something the night before is sort of up for conjecture, but basically wakes up and recants the entire thing, thinks better of this whole entire confession. So that's still playing out. Obviously, from an investigation standpoint, there's a lot of folks who think that he is the guy. There's some folks that think he isn't, but talking about that media pressure, right? This environment was created where the whole town of Tenino was talking again. Actually, they're going to kill me if I say that. Tenino was talking again. And somebody said something that they had not said before, right? And so for CrowdSolve, I think, and for that brand of events, that's really what it takes, and one thing that we can lend to it. That's awesome. The cruise completely 180. Yeah. The cruise is like, all right, we take very seriously at CrowdSolve and Crimecon. How can we go and just like kind of, as you mentioned earlier, the community is really strong. How can we just bring the community together in a way that is just a little bit more fun? True crime trivia, interactive demos of things, right? Like what cruises do best in terms of folks meeting each other and just sort of like letting their guard down, all in a fun environment. Was the idea for that one.
Is it the same kind of planning process on a cruise versus a hotel? I mean, I feel like that would be a lot different. Or do you just kind of like, hey, we all meet up, or do you have to actually like book space out?
You book space out. The challenge with the cruise, so you book a group with the cruise ship. So the biggest cruises ultimately take over an entire cruise ship, right? When you first start, you take out a block of the cruise ship, and it's similar to a hotel in that way that you have certain, responsibilities for filling things. But actually the most challenging part is that the space is so small on a cruise ship. So you're trying to, get the theater and things, but you look at these itineraries and it's like, okay, you're going to be in Nassau day 1, and in Coco Cay day 2, and these sorts of things. And you're like, as a planner, you're sitting there and saying like, well, I don't want someone sitting in a dark theater in a cruise ship from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We're in Nassau. So how do I make sure we have enough programming, but then also like go enjoy where we're at? And so it's putting that together, which is obviously still a work in progress, but we're really trying to focus it on a couple cold cases. Rody Sanchez is a guy from The Killing Fields, which was a pretty big show. He's dedicated his life to the case of Eugene Bonifastain, which is a cold case from Louisiana that he did the show on. And we love him because he's a character, but B, he's retired now, and he just every day still, that's the case he thinks about. And so for him, this idea to continue to spread the word on that case and get people up to speed and talk about her life and talk about what happened is really cool. And again, he's a bit of a character. He likes his whiskey neat, I believe. And so he will be a lot of fun on a cruise ship.
For sure. That sounds like an awesome time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kevin, I know you
other than a pandemic is what you mean for an awesome time.
Yes. You don't want to do that one right now.
Kevin, I know you were pressed for time. Do we need to let you go? Should we wrap it up?
I can do 5 more. I'm good. He's not, okay. The boy is not calling me yet from the other room. And at any moment in time, he may come out and say, it's bedtime.
Perfect. Time to go.
We've already got our tickets, or not tickets yet, but we've already booked our hotel for Crimecon. It's 2021, right? I mean.
Yep. Yeah. San Antonio.
Well, if you're going to San Antonio, you're not going to see anybody there because it's in Austin.
Oh yeah, it is in Austin.
I was going to say, wait a minute, I thought it was Austin.
Yeah. No, it is Austin.
So
it is Austin.
Don't go to San Antonio, Robin.
No. Don't. So Crimecon 2020 was postponed until October, and that is still going to be in Orlando.
Yes.
And I moved my ticket. I wasn't able to go, so I moved my ticket to 2021. Booked the hotel right away, and that's Ashley's birthday weekend, so we are going to have a ball in Austin.
I was like, I'm so excited. I was like, this is the perfect birthday.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, she just
Where do you live, Ashley?
I live in Nashville still.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I've heard Austin is really cool. I'm like, I can't imagine like, we're going to be able to do Crimecon, which I just hear amazing things about every year. But then also like it's in Austin, which I've always wanted to visit. It's like the best of both worlds. So,
that's
thanks for doing that for me. I really appreciate you booking it in Austin for me.
Yeah, a great way to get in. That's for a first one. That's a great way to get in.
Yeah,
That's a pretty good birthday weekend in Austin. You can't beat that.
I know. How do you, real quick, how do you choose like the cities? I mean, do you look at statistics or just a certain size, or how does that work?
Well, in the beginning, it was honestly what city would take us, because for a new event, a hotel is not so excited about reserving a few hundred hotel rooms for an event that has nobody signed up for it. So I had been to Indy many times and had loved it and knew how great the city was, and their little like convention bureau saying is so great and so true. They are half a day's drive from half the United States. So the population centers who can drive to Indy, in a reasonable drive is great. And you're pulling from Chicago and Louisville and a bunch of big cities around there. Once we got past that, these things are booked. Generally, the cities are booked up to 2 years, sometimes 3 years even in advance. So we've already booked, obviously 2021 in Austin, but 2022, and now we're booking 23. So it's challenging in some ways because you don't totally know what the attendance is going to be like, right? And even that year, right? When we're in Orlando this year, our May Orlando event was obviously shaping up to be our biggest event in terms of attendance yet, and sponsorship and all these things completely changed now, right? I mean, the October version of this, if we're allowed to have it, are they going to tell us the chairs have to be 6 feet apart? Like no one has any idea. But point being, we have a venue this year that may or may not fit the size of the crowd. In Austin, we're hoping that we've made it, and in 2022, we hope we made it. But, in terms of cities, we felt like people like to come in early and they like to stay later. And so we should have a city that gives them, things to do. We have a heavily female crowd, as you guys might have guessed. And so, we've watched, we just like, everyone has different things, but we've watched what they like to do.
That's smart.
And, I think we've coalesced kind of around cities that have a little bit of that fun, like, I hate to say it this way, but like girls' weekend vibe to them.
Yeah.
Nashville, Austin, can't tell you the next one, but New Orleans.
Robin was waiting. She's like,
I know. But New Orleans, Nashville, and Austin, you can sort of take a guess of the track that we're on there. And but ultimately for us, I mean, for me as an event planner, what I want to get down to is probably 4 cities, maybe 5 that sort of got the best reviews from attendees, and just get into a rotation of that, rather than because every time you go to a new city, it's what's the venue, what's the hotel, what's the meeting space look like, what are the insurance requirements, there's a million things there. It's nice to get into a routine.
Those are things I did not even think about. That's so smart of you to do that. I mean, to look at the city and what the other things they can do. I mean, Nashville, I think we got like Bachelorette capital of the world, or of the United States, like a couple of years ago. It's everywhere. Whenever I go downtown, me and my friends will count the number of bachelorette parties, because I mean, it's literally in like the 40s.
And they're all on like those open pedal things, and like you can't miss them. And the parties are everywhere.
They're screaming, and you're like, oh, there they are. They got their little sashes on. But
we did our Saturday night VIP event at the Wild Horse Saloon. We took out the entire Wild Horse, which is just an incredible spot and beautiful.
Yeah.
And right on Broadway. But you could see after that event, half the people sort of like went to Broadway and just kept the party going, and half the people got on the buses and went back to the Gaylords. So it's, it's a mix. You got to provide something for everybody.
I'm going to give a shout out. I hope they don't get too upset. I'm sure they won't. To the Dateline gentlemen. So one of our cupcakes was at the VIP event, and she had made the comment that she was going back to the hotel. 2 of the Dateline men escorted her back to the Gaylord and literally to her hotel room to make sure that she was safe and she felt safe and escorted. And you can't put a price on that. Yeah. That is how great the speakers are that come to your event. It's top notch, and it genuine. Every single session that I went to, genuine. I ran into Nancy Grace, and I said, and I was going to her event actually. And I said, can we get a quick selfie right before we go in? And she's like, of course. So I have a selfie with Nancy Grace. Yeah. Most down to earth person. She is. It's real. There's nothing fake about it. Everybody there was wonderful. Podcast row people sat and chit-chatted with everybody. It was a great experience.
Well, I'm glad you said that. And I think part of it, is how do we maintain that? And also, people in our industry, whether they're content, whether they're production companies, whether they're a network, whether they're a podcaster, this event is really one of the only opportunities to sort of just all get together as a community. And I think see the fans face to face, but also like all talk about this idea that the media loves to cover so much around, like, how could you guys like this stuff that is celebrating the worst day of someone's life? And really, I think talk that through and all sort of acknowledge the people who are there have never once said to me, this event is tasteless in any way. Like, the people who are there get it. I think it's the people who are not there, but I think, again, it's that ability to sort of let your guard down and talk about it and just not feel like you're being judged for being in a place where, you're talking about these topics.
Yeah. Any last minute words that you would like all of our listeners to know about Crimecon?
About Crimecon, just come. If you haven't been there, come. I mean, Orlando is going to be a great opportunity. If anyone hasn't been, it's probably, I don't know, the numbers are still really good, in terms of what people have done as far as transferring out, but I think everyone's in a wait and see attitude. But it could be a great, based on the trajectory we've been on, Orlando could be a great opportunity to like relive the Indianapolis days that are gone around like a really intimate, small event where,
Right.
You can get up close and personal. But I think the only other thing I would say about it, and again, hopefully you've seen this, you don't have to be like a niche true crime fan who listens to 12 hours of podcast a day to enjoy the weekend.
Sure.
A lot of the topics we try to cover and the things we try to cover are bigger than the sort of like deep dive nerdy stuff. I mean, there's canines, right? Like, who doesn't love police dogs? And you watch them about drugs and like how they train them and these sorts of things, So I think there's a lot there for everybody. And, even if you're being dragged there by a spouse or something, it's worthwhile.
I actually did talk to a couple when we were waiting for one of the, I can't think of what it was. It was, what do you call it when somebody is like a bystander? And it was totally put on. It was basically a skit, and it's, what did you see, and would you be able to tell the police
the
what you
interrogation
saw?
experience. Yeah.
What was it?
It was the eyewitness experience.
The eyewitness, yes, that's what it was.
That's the word you're thinking.
And anyways, so right before that, I was sitting there and another couple and I started talking, and the husband was actually enjoying it just as much, as if not more, than his wife. And he said, I was really coming here just to kind of protect her, and I didn't know where she was going and what she was doing. And it turned out he liked it probably more than she did. So there really is something for everybody.
Yeah. And that's a great example of an experience that we built in conjunction with an outside group, where the premise of that was eyewitnesses to crimes are unreliable. If you're an eyewitness, you don't think you're unreliable, right? So how do you prove to people that they actually have no idea what happened? And you saw it, right? We got everyone's adrenaline going with an air horn.
Yep.
Guys broke into a room and things happened. And then they sort of asked everybody, okay, tell us what happened, right? And people were like, they came in that door. No, they came in that door. There were 3 of them. No, there were 7 of them. There was, they were this high. No, they were this tall. Like no one could piece together the correct story. But it's living those things in those moments that get people to understand how it really works, and why the next time you listen to a podcast or watch a trial on TV or hear a thing and, well, this guy was convicted based on eyewitness testimony, maybe you take a pause and just think like, I don't know if the eyewitness testimony alone is enough anymore, or if I'm ever a member of a jury, maybe you'd view that through a different prism. And I think that's the best we can do as far as an event goes, in terms of educating, right, the society, which is the jury. If I'm ever put on trial, I sure hope my jury is educated enough and understands, some of these things. Right. So, I'm glad you brought that one up. Yeah,
it was really an eye opener.
Yeah.
Because you're correct. You think you do know what you saw, and then when it's replayed for you, and there were different angles of different cameras, so you could see. Because there was really 3 different events basically going on. I was maybe 40% right.
Yeah.
And then you kind of sit back and think, oh, right. I really didn't see what I thought I saw.
Right. Right. And it's an adrenaline, you know, and it's not just like an armed robbery. I mean, it's a car accident. It's anything that gets your adrenaline going. My brother was out on a walk last week and their dog got attacked by another dog and he jumped in. When he called me, he was you could tell the adrenaline was pumping so much. And as I started, and I was bringing him to the ER and I'm talking to him and it was just like a jarble of information, like, you know, well, who was the guy and what happened? And like, you can't just get the story together because of all these things that are rushing, you know, through your body. And what they explained in that session, the FBI guys, was like it's a survival mechanism that's built into our brains. Right. And then like, it's there, it's fight or flight and it's there for a reason, but your brain focuses on survival and not taking into account what color was the guy's skin and how tall was he and how many were there and what, like, the details are not relevant to your brain at that point in time. So, you know, people who witness a shooting or witness a violent act oftentimes experience the same thing. Later, they feel bad that they didn't have more information and they start kind of creating oftentimes stories. But I think it's eye-opening for a lot of people who think that eyewitness testimony is the best kind of testimony. It's actually the worst kind of testimony.
Oh my God. That's something I learned just now then. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, you always hear about like when someone has trauma, it gets blocked out, but that's cool because that's the backstory of why that happens. How neat.
Right. Yeah, no, it's cool. And that's the kind of stuff I love and the kind of stuff I definitely want to do more of.
Interesting.
I'm a Crimecon insider. So Ashley, when you come up here, I will actually be able to show you the event.
That's so exciting.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, before we go to, do you have any social media handles that our listeners can get a hold of you, or the website where they can go ahead and get tickets?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Crimecon.com is our website. It's got everything about all of our future events and past events is up there. Awesome. The insider thing is a paid thing. I think it's $50 a year and you get
$49.99. I just renewed.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you. And you get on-demand access to like all of our sessions from past events, and we just keep adding to that. So that's pretty cool. And there's a good community in there as well on the app. And then I think we're at Crimecon on Instagram, at Crimecon on Facebook, and at Crimecon HQ, because there's damn people in Germany that own at Crimecon and haven't used it for 3 years. Trying my best, but have not gotten that back yet.
Day.
So yeah, one day.
Well, thank you. Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Hope you're staying safe, and we'll see you, I guess, for your birthday in Austin.
Yay! I'm so excited.
All right.
We'll see you soon. All right. And to our listeners, stay awesome.
And keep reaching for your anything.
Bye, guys.